Yeah, good evening. So yesterday we started discussing about TypeScript. Some basic introduction I given you about TypeScript, what it is, what are the features of TypeScript I told you. And now TypeScript language basics, all are same. Language basics means variables, data types, operators, statements, and functions. These all comes under language basics. Variables, data types, operators, statements, functions, all these concepts are almost same like JavaScript, only just few changes. These are language basics. But in order to first learn, means in order to use these all, I will show you first how do we set up environment for TypeScript. That means you have to install TypeScript. We have to install TypeScript on your PC. Because TypeScript is not directly available, we have to install. Already we have package manager. So what you can do is from command prompt anywhere. So npm install globally TypeScript. You have to use it. npm install globally TypeScript on your PC. So this will install TypeScript globally on your PC so that you can create and use TypeScript project TypeScript in any location. So actually the latest version of TypeScript is 4.7. So if you want to know the latest version, so you need to know about TSC version. So this will get the TypeScript latest version. So you have to first set up and install TypeScript, and you can check the TypeScript latest version. Latest version is actually 4.7. That is the latest version. TypeScript latest version is 4.7. Actually, let's run this and see here. I will open the command prompt, and in this command prompt, just you have to run npm install so globally TypeScript. Just you have to do this. And we are downloading and installing the TypeScript, and it is successfully installed on your PC. Now TSCV, it will get the version. 4.7 is the latest version of TypeScript. So we will use this version. We will see what is there in this. So first you need to understand how do we set up an environment. After that, you need to know, before going into language, you need to know TypeScript architecture. I'll give a simple overview of TypeScript architecture. TypeScript architecture actually, if you remembered yesterday, I told you that TypeScript is completely built with TypeScript, right? What is advantage of that? TypeScript compiler is built in TypeScript. That means it can directly interact with hardware services. It doesn't require any another language as a medium. It supports directly low-level features. It can directly interact with hardware. TypeScript compilers are built in TypeScript only because they can directly interact with operating system services and hardware. So TypeScript architecture, what actually it contains. See, this is the basic architecture of TypeScript. Yeah, this is the basic TypeScript architecture. This is the TypeScript architecture. That is the basic TypeScript architecture. Let's see what these are actually. At the bottom, you can see the TypeScript core compiler is there. TypeScript core compiler. Actually, the first you can see the TypeScript core compiler. We have TypeScript core compiler. TypeScript core compiler, actually, the purpose of this core compiler is anywhere you know the meaning of compiler. Compiler is used for translation. That means a compiler is used for translating. The responsible for translating into machine code. Anything need to be converted into machine code. Compiler is responsible for translating. And the core compiler's responsibility, what it will do while translating? While translating, it will check for keywords, right? It will check for syntax, right? It will check for data types. It will check for data types. So it will check conversions, converting of one type into another type. So it will check input and output activities, right? It will check the code blocks. Code blocks means a block started and it is ended or not. So it will check the entry point. Entry point means from where execution have to start. All these are done by compiler, the core compiler. If there is any problem in this, it will report errors. It will report errors. And you see, to handle these in a compiler, to handle these tasks in a compiler, you can see compiler have a lot of things. Core TS, program TS, TypeScript files will have extension .ts, scanner TS, parser TS, checker TS, emitter TS. I hope some of these things you heard in your programming languages, if you have learned any, means not TS, but those terms. So actually, compiler internally manages so many things, and they are managed by these files actually. Emitter is responsible for handling output activities. In a computer programming language, the output activities are managed by emitters. Input activities are managed by scanner. Scanner will manage input activities. You might have seen programming languages like C, they have scanf. Why it is called scan? It is input, na? Why it is called scan? That is scanner, which is responsible for handling input in the compiler system. We have parser. It is for translating one type to another. We have checker, verifying data types. What? Because it is strongly typed, it has to verify what type it is. We have program TS. It is used to verify entry point, the blocks, the entry points. That means where to start with, which one to start with. That is verified by program TS. And core TS, it is responsible for verifying the keywords and syntaxes. That means what keywords you are using, are they available in a compiler system or not? Means in TypeScript you are using for, while, for each. Is there a for each in TypeScript or not? These all are done by core TS. So inside the compiler, you have a lot of things like core.ts. We have like program.ts. We have like scanner.ts. We have emitter.ts. So you have like checker.ts. We have parser.ts. These are all the options there. So usually a core compiler is responsible for handling all these things. So we have different files inside the compiler which are managed for handling various. So core is verifying keywords. So program is entry point. So scanner is input, emitter is output, checker is data type. So parser is conversions, convert. All such things are managed by these files. Actually, we have a core compiler. Okay, now successfully your program compiled. That means there are no errors in your program. Everything is fine. That means successfully your program compiled. There are no errors. It is finished. Now, is it understandable to browser? It is not understandable to browser. Why? Because browser cannot understand TypeScript. Then what browser can understand is JavaScript. So we have to now translate. We call it as transcompile. Transcompile this TypeScript program into JavaScript program. This is done by standalone compiler. This is tsc.ts. There is another compiler. Standalone compiler. Standalone compiler is nothing but it is a trans compiler. That means that compiles the TypeScript code into JavaScript. It compiles the TypeScript code into JavaScript. How to handle the JavaScript conversions, I will tell you in next level. We will see that. So we need a trans compiler that is actually standalone compiler. This compiler is responsible for translating the TypeScript program into JavaScript. That means actually, so this TSC TypeScript, you use program.ts, then it is automatically what happens? It generates program.js. Understood? That means it converts a JavaScript program. So that means it will transcompile this and it will convert into JavaScript. Actually, we don't need to use core compiler manually. When you use a transcompiler, first it will use core compiler, then transcompiler. That means transcompiler internally invokes core compiler first. It will check all are correct. Then if all are correct, then it will do transcompiling. That means it will convert into JavaScript, right? That is the reason here we have two compilers. That means many times the question asked like, why you have two compilers? One is the core, another one is standalone. One is to verify whether all the code you written is perfectly functioning as per the syntax, and another one is to translate into JavaScript, right? That is, two compilers are there. We have language service. In the TypeScript architecture, you will have a language service. We will have a language service. We will have language service. So generally, already we know in React, already we discussed that what is a service, right? What is a service? Language service is managed by service.ts. What is a service? How you define a service? I told you na captcha like a service, right? So technically service is a predefined business logic. It is a predefined business logic. Service is a predefined business logic. Is a predefined business logic which you can inject and use in any component, right? It's a predefined business logic which you can just inject and use. What it contains? If you remembered, I told you that service is a collection of factories. Factory is a collection of values and functions. A set of values and functions are configured in a factory, and a set of factories are configured in a service. So service is a predefined business logic. Now I told you that compiler will verify whether the keywords you written are correct or not. Syntax is correct or not. From where? Where the library for TypeScript is present. Who provides the library for TypeScript? That is by language service. So language service is nothing but technically it provides the functions and values required for TypeScript script. So it provides the functions and values required for TypeScript. That means service is a predefined business logic. And whatever the functions, that means it configures the library required for TypeScript. Whatever the library required for TypeScript is language service. It is done by language service. Now, what is the point? Platform dependent. That means it can run on only the operating system where you have compiled it. So that means this is not platform neutral. It runs only on the, that means actually it is unmanaged. It is unmanaged code. Unmanaged code means it is not platform independent. It is not platform independent. It is unmanaged code. It is not platform independent. It is not platform independent. So it is unmanaged code. That means it is not platform independent. So this is the problem. This is the problem with the language service. So we have language service. It provides all the functionality required for that. This is language service. This is language service. And this is very important. Language service. So this is platform dependent. That is the reason we need a shim. VS is actually Visual Studio shims, actually VS. So what is this shim? So that means here, what is the shim? So we have a shims.ts. So this is actually, so VS shim, we call it as VS shim. Have you ever heard about these shims in any programming language? No. Anywhere in any programming language, you heard about shimmers? No. No idea. Actually, this term means you may not be familiar, but internally these are very strong things. At very complex architectural level, people might have heard about it. Right? means people who are involved in building a operating system services. That means if you are involved in creating OS services, OS services also a part. I told you distributed computing na. So we have to create several operating system services which can interact with OS, operating system services. For such things, we need these shimmers knowledge actually. Shim. Everywhere it is there. Java shims are there, .NET shims are there. That means what is the meaning of this shim actually? Actually, so interesting part here. You might know this. For example, you see, suppose I am showing you here prawns. You see, this is prawns. Yeah, this is prawn, right? And do you know we have a shrimp? Shrimp. You know we have a shrimp. You know, it also looks like prawn only. Prawn, shrimps both look similar, right? See, both look similar. Do you know the difference between shrimp and prawn? Any idea? No? Shrimps are gender neutral. They are gender neutral, right? That shrimp term indicates that it is not specific. It's not specific. They are actually gender neutral. That means a shim is a component present in every compiler, every programming language compiler, which claims that it is OS independent. Understood? That means any technology claims that it is operating system independent. That is because of shims. Who will control this? That is done by shims, right? Actually, you have this in all OS languages. I say Java shim. Yeah, you can see Java shim is there. What is a shim? What is that shim library? So it says that transparently runs everywhere, right? These shims are available in computing systems, so they are available. So that means they are actually used for transparently intercepts API calls. Transparently intercepting API calls means they are not dependent on any OS. You can see just now we already know API means it can run anywhere. You can consume anywhere. That means it is not specific. You can use in JavaScript, you can use in jQuery, you can use in Angular, you can use in React. APIs are shims. So they are not to any device or any application type, any operating system, right? So shims, what they do is actually shim makes. So it makes TypeScript program platform independent. It makes TypeScript program platform independent. It makes the TypeScript program platform independent. And actually, this leads to, so we have managed language service. Managed language service. That means it is the library that runs on every operating system. That runs on every operating system. You have unmanaged library, managed library. TypeScript first generates a managed library. The unmanaged library. That unmanaged library can run only on specific operating system. That is taken by shim and it will make it transparent. That means it will make it run on every operating system. For that, it will generate another library. We call it as managed. This managed library is platform independent library. It can run everywhere. It can run everywhere. That is what actually managed language service. We have two language services. You see, we have a language service and we have a managed language service. So the purpose of that is this. The purpose of that is this, that language service and managed language service. Right? Another, you have a TS server, TS server, TS server, TS server, and it is server.ts. Already you know what is the role of a server. What is the role of a server? You have TS server. What is the role of server? Some technical terms, anything? How you can use some technical terms and explain it? What is a server? What is the key responsibilities of server? One of the key responsibility of server is hosting. Server is to host your application, right? That is the first thing. After that, it will handle request and response. Request and response. That means this is the key responsibility of a server: hosting, request and response. And generally, TypeScript server, TS server, right? TS server. So hosts the TS program. Understood? It hosts the TS program. It compiles, and it handles the request and response, and request and response. That means now we said that TypeScript program will compile, TypeScript program will report the problems, right? Where it will compile. So the TypeScript program is loaded into a TypeScript server. In that server, all this will happen. Translating, compiling, processing, so converting the managed into unmanaged, unmanaged into managed, all these are done in TS server. So we have TS server, TypeScript server. That is another option. Editors is not a part. Editors is nothing but, actually, editors is nothing but, editors, it uses actually tsconfig tsconfig.json actually. tsconfig.json means editors nothing but it configures the rules for TypeScript. It configures the rules for TypeScript in any project. What do you mean by rules for TypeScript in any project? That means, if you remembered, I told you that JavaScript have module system. I told you, na? In the beginning, we discussed that module system. What are the module systems? Currently, which module system we are using with React? With React, which module system we are using? In the beginning, I told you. Even we got that from CDN library, na? CDN, module system. CDN library, na? We discussed about CDN library. It uses UMD module system. We got it from UMD system, na? In the first, I showed you. If we try to use AMD, it's not working, right? It was working from UMD. What else? Require.js, common.js, UMD, AMD, these are all module systems. Now, another important is actually it configures rules. Rules means so many things are there. That means module system and JavaScript version, all such things are defined. Rules for TypeScript means, for example, how to write a string. How to write a string? Generally, some developers will write double quote, some will write single quote, some will write backtick, all are valid. Then this will lead to a lot of inconsistency. if everybody have his own way of writing, then a lot of program inconsistency will come, because on a project, hundreds of people should work. And your code is sent to push it to other developer. He will continue it. Then it leads a lot of confusion. Everybody have his own technique. No, we need some standard rules that you can define in this TS config. Which module system to use? Is it CommonJS? Is it UMD? Is it AMD? I'd said that TypeScript is translated into JavaScript. TypeScript, which version? 4.7. Translated into which version JavaScript? That you decide. Because in my project, I may be using JavaScript ES6. JavaScript versions are ES6, ES5, ES7, ES8, ES20 is the latest. ES20 is the latest. 2022 is still under developers release only. It's not complete. ES20 is the latest version of JavaScript, but still companies are using still ES5 or 6 only. So very rarely now people are using ES8, ES 2020, right? Those are latest versions actually. That means you have to tell into which version of JavaScript it should translate. TypeScript need to translate into JavaScript. Into which version? That is all defined inside this file. Into this file. So that is actually the concept here is. So this is the basic architecture of TypeScript. That means when you are using TypeScript in any project, whether it may be Angular, React, or Vue, or anywhere. So these are the basic things, right? We will have a core compiler, standalone compiler, language service, shim, managed code, unmanaged language service, TS servers, and configuration for editors. Across editors, how it should work. Across development environments, how it should work. This is all we can define. So let's see how we can start working with this. How do we set up this, right? Let's see. Now I will close this here. Let's create one sample project. I will go to any location on my PC and I will just create a new folder. Let's create a new folder. I will give as React TypeScript just for our project sake. I am creating a new folder, React TypeScript. And let's go. And here we will open this in a solution. And let's open this open folder. And this is React TypeScript. Okay. This is an empty project we have. And already I told you, as per the project traditions, we will generate a package.json file. To generate a package.json file, npm init, init y. I'm using npm init file. It will generate a package.json file. Yeah, that is the package.json file. And now here, if you are using TypeScript, you have to use tsc init also. tsc init, TypeScript init. This is going to generate the TypeScript configuration file. It is going to generate the TypeScript configuration file. I think init is removed hyphen init. Yeah, it is creating this tsconfig.json. Right? So we need to do two things now. So set up a project for TypeScript. This is set up empty project. This is not React project. First we will learn the language, then we will use it in React. Set up empty project for TypeScript. For this very simple steps we are doing here. First, create a folder. I created some React TypeScript, any location you can use, and open in VS Code, and you have to just run the following commands in terminal. Okay, and that is npm init. So why this will generate package.json, and we have tsc hyphen init. This is going to generate tsconfig.json. Actually, earlier we have another tslint. It is outdated now. It is removed. But still, in old projects which are using TypeScript and React, you will find a file called tslint.json. You will find a file called tslint.json. It is no longer there. In old projects, because still companies are using some old versions of React. Majority companies are using old versions of React with TypeScript old versions. Their tslint will be there. tslint is language analysis tool actually. Language analysis tool, same. It will tell all the rules for TypeScript. Now it is outdated. It is gone. It is no longer available. I hope you know JavaScript also have JSLint. You know that, na? JSLint is there. JSLint. JSLint is JavaScript language analysis tool. If you are using JavaScript in any project and you want to follow the standards, then install JSLint in that project. Then wherever you are using JavaScript, it will alert you whenever you are mismatching the code standards. That means you are not writing code as per standards. It will give you warning and errors. Right? That is actually JSLint. JavaScript JSLint. Lint, yeah. This is JSLint. This is JavaScript language analysis. Right? And this generally people install in their projects, especially when they are building JavaScript oriented apps. Why? Because so this will clean the code and it will verify that you are not writing any code which is not as per standards. As per standards. And not only that, it can even verify the browser compatibilities. That means you tell which browser you are targeting, it will immediately tell this function is not suitable for this browser. At high level, these are very much required. So because we don't take chance of compatibilities and all, we have to use these kind of language analysis tools. And I think you already know PMD, Sonar, like so many other tools are there. Independently, we use them. That means for JavaScript, it's not necessary that you have to use JSLint. You have like PMD, yeah, PMD, yeah, what is it? Yeah, PMD, yeah, this is PMD. This is you can see documentation. This is also language analysis. You go to rule reference, you will have HTML rules, Java rules, Maven rules, PLSQL rules, everything. That means here they will tell you what are the rules of HTML. How do you design a HTML page? What you are missing? Which one you need to keep it mandatory, right? You're writing some shortcut code techniques. It says that this is not good for program, right? All such things are verified by using these tools. tsconfig will do that. Earlier we have tslint, but now we don't have this anymore, right? Outdated, it's gone. It is completely obsolete, no longer in use, right? So this is generated now. Observe here, as I told you. So package JSON we already know, but here you see tsconfig.json. You can see TypeScript configuration. See target JavaScript ES6. Default JavaScript target is set to ES6. You can set to ES8, ES7, ES2020. Latest is actually ES2020. You can set to it. You can set to it. But majority of companies are still using ES6 only. They are using ES6. You have 2021, 22, but they are developer releases actually. Right? So you can use this ES2020. So technically another thing, see, it is asking which module system. It is using a module system called common JS. You can default, it is using common JS. You can use AMD, UMD, require JS, any module system, right? That means when you are saying that I am going to use JavaScript, it have a lot of configurations. And when you are translating TypeScript into JavaScript, so many rules are there. That means we can put certain standards that it have to follow like this. Not only this, now where to generate JavaScript file and store it. Such configurations also you can mention in this TS config. So a lot of details are there. Remember, see, out file, out directory. This indicates where to keep the JavaScript files, output files. You can uncomment them. Remember, these are all commented. And you see, by default, strict is true. Right? Already I told you that implicitly strictly typed. Our JavaScript needs to be explicitly strictly typed. It is implicitly strictly typed. And see, lot of options will be there. You have to just uncomment what you want and you can use them. These you will able to do gradually when you are working in different environments according to the situations, right? So this is one basic thing you need to understand, how to define the configuration files, right? How to add the configuration files. This is very much asked in even React interviews also. We have seen in lot of React interviews for experienced people, they ask that if you mention that I know React with TypeScript, they will ask that how TypeScript decides that it has to convert into JavaScript ES6, ES7. Right? That means how TypeScript decides. That is done by using this TS config. We decide here how it have to handle, right? This is basic, one important thing you need to know. Our ready? Now what we will do here, we will create some folders in this project. I will keep public for static resources and I will keep SRC for dynamic resources. These are common folders. Now in the beginning we discussed that, right? Public have static and SRC dynamic resource. In public I will keep index.html. Okay, and in SRC we will add our TypeScript programs. That means if you want to use TypeScript, then here I am adding new. What is the file? Index.ts. TypeScript files usually have the extension .ts. Now here we have to write the TypeScript programs. Now we haven't learned any TypeScript syntaxes, right? Now we need to know that. This is environment set. This is environment set. Now let's see the language now. Environment set, we are adding files, add folders now. We are adding public and we are adding SRC. 2 folders we are configuring. And now how to use TypeScript? For that first you have to write a little bit anything TypeScript. So for that first you need to understand TypeScript language basics. Language basics. In the language basics, so first thing, variables, and no need to explain variables, everything same as JavaScript, nothing. Same as JavaScript. That means variable naming, variable scopes, variable conventions. That means variables are declared with var, let, and const. All are same. There is no change. Only one additional thing now here. That means everything same as JavaScript. But what is additional about variables is variables are strongly typed. Variables are strongly typed. So actually in JavaScript they are not strongly typed. Now here variables are strongly typed. That means here, so generally syntactically we have to define, so let, var, const, all 3 differences, you know what is difference between all of these 3. we can use here. So variable name and colon, we have to mention data type that is additionally here. So if you don't define data type, let, you define variable name without data type, then the type is any. Type is considered as any. Type is considered as any. That means by default it is ready to take any value that is any type. If you don't define the type, it is any type. So if you define, then it is strictly typed, means strongly typed. Not only that, actually you should know that typescript supports type inference. TypeScript supports type inference. What is meant by type inference? Type inference is nothing but, type inference means, for example, syntactically, so let some username. Here I just defined John like this. I just defined like this. That means I initialized value. And into this username, I am storing some number. Then it says this is invalid. Because username is string. But we haven't mentioned that. But according to the value you initialized into it, it will fix the type. According to the value you defined into it, so it will fix the type. Remember, type inference, it is only based on initialization. Understood? Initialization, not assignment. It is only based on initialization, not assignment. That means let username, like this I defined. Username is equal to John. Understood? And username is equal to some 45 or 60,000. Here this is valid, and below this one, this is also valid. That is what I told you there in the definition. It is based on only initialization, not assignment. That means above what we are doing, we are initializing, right? Which one you initialized? String. At the time of declaring, when you initialize any value into it, then data type is fixed. Later you do assign any data type, you can assign different types, because this is treated as what type? This is as any type. You can store a number, you can store a string, you can store a boolean, anything possible. It is depending on initializations. That is called type inference. So that is very important here. So here in TypeScript, so when you are configuring the type, you see here let username, and I am not defining data type. Into that username I am using John, and into that username I am storing some number. Both are valid. But once I initialize this as a string, then this second one is not valid. It says that number is not assignable, but I haven't mentioned data type. It takes it as string. If I assign any number, initialize any number, then it will not take string, because it is number type. This is type inference. It doesn't depends on assignment, depends on initialize. That means what you initialize is important. Initialize is important. This is what type inference is. And very important is, so second point is data types. All data types all same as JavaScript types. JavaScript types means same. What are those? We have primitive types. Am I right? Primitive types. What are the primitive types we are having? Primitive types means we have number, we have string, we have boolean, we have null, and you have undefined. These are called primitive types. We have non-primitive types. Primitive types. Non-primitive types means you have array, we have object, and we have map. These are non-primitive types. Now, JavaScript data types are same here. JavaScript data types are same here. What you use in JavaScript, the data types are same here. JavaScript data types are same. Now, the point is how to configure. So here we have to configure like this. Syntax same. I will tell you special concepts, means which are different, we will discuss. That means let some name, it is what type string. Some let price, it is what type number. So here let, so let suppose stock, this is what type boolean. These are the data types directly available here. And very important, suppose let quantity. This quantity I am expecting from a prompt. Now tell me, as per your JavaScript knowledge, what is the result of prompt? What should be the type of quantity? If I click cancel button, actually in JavaScript, you know that prompt returns a string or null. If I click cancel button, it will return null, not string. Then how? If I put here data type as string, then it is not valid. It's not valid because prompt returns null also. Now, if I put null, this is not valid because it returns string also. What is the specialty about TypeScript? TypeScript supports union of types. TypeScript supports union of types. That means you can define like this now. Let quantity, it is string or null. That is union of types. So now it is suitable for prompt. Understood? That you have to define. You can define various types. Let, suppose value, it can be I am expecting to be a string, or I am expecting to be a number, or I am expecting to be a boolean. You can use any 2, 3, 4, anything you can define. This is good. This is very important because many times the return is different. Every time they don't return same. For example, suppose I am writing equal to value. I am using a conform, right? Now tell me what should be the type of value. Do you know JavaScript conform box is there? All right. What a conform box returns? What a JavaScript conform box returns? JavaScript conform box returns true or false. That means it should be Boolean type. Understood? No need of null because it will return either true or false only. Okay, true. Cancel, false. So that is, union is not required every time. Union is required only when we are expecting different values. Right? That means you see now, you will find that here. Let username, I am taking from username, I am making it as string and I am taking from prompt, then it shows an error. So prompt is, suppose I am saying enter name, then it is showing error. So, and here I will use a union type. Union is null. Now it satisfies. Why it shows error? It shows error because it says that it may return null also. Right, then you have to configure the type as a null. This is union of types. That is one important thing you need to know while working with the types. So all data types are same. Means whatever you learned in JavaScript, same data types. Just the point is mentioning the types, mentioning union for union of types is important. That's how we need to configure the types. This is different from what you have learned in Java. And of course, you may ask like, without this, I can keep any. I can use any type. That means it is universally ready to accept anything. I can configure as any. But problem is it can take a boolean, it can take a number, it can take any another type also. No, I want either string or null. Accidentally or intentionally, any another type should not come. In that case, strongly type, either null or string. So if you give any, it is ready to take any type. But this may not be satisfying every time because you can send a number, boolean, everything will come. No, I am expecting only 2 from it. That's how we can configure union of types. So, okay, this is union of types. Then the question here is type for array. How you define type for array? How do you configure that? Okay, that means number, string, booleans, null, undefined, all are same. There is no change in that. Just union of types you need to understand. Now the question, how you can configure array? What you learned about array in JavaScript? What is the purpose of array? What is purpose of array in any computer programming language? What is the purpose of array in every computer programming language? What do you say? Arrays are used for what do you say? Actually, in computer programming, array is used to reduce overhead and complexity. That is the main purpose. That is technically correct point about array. That means storing group of values, storing similar values, different values. That is its behavior. Understood? Array stores many values. What you are trying to tell? You are trying to tell what array can do. I am asking why I have to use array? Not to store group of values, right? If I store group of, what is use of array in a programming language? So actually arrays are used for reducing overhead. What is overhead? Arrays are used for reducing overhead and complexity actually. What is overhead? Overhead is nothing but, actually, I hope you people are already aware. Actually, in early days, in electronic device, we used to store data. We used to store data in magnetic tape, you know. I hope you already have a little bit any awareness, or in your childhood you use tape recorders, VCRs. Data is stored in a magnet tape. Generally in a magnet tape, what happens? The data is stored in a sequential order. Data is stored in a sequential order. That means in a magnet tape, usually you will have a read-write head. Am I right? You will have a read-write head. Usually you will have a read-write head. And this read-write head will read in a sequential order. That is the reason if I want to listen to the previous song, I have to rewind and listen. Right? I cannot directly jump to second, third, fourth. A sequence. That is the reason we don't have problems. So problem started when we started using disk. When we started using disk, floppy CDs. When floppy CDs, hard disk came, now problem started. Why? Because generally what happens is in the floppy CD hard disk, in a disk, actually I hope you people know that in a disk data is stored in tracks and sectors. Am I right? In a floppy CD hard disk, data is stored in tracks and sectors like this. Data is stored in tracks and sectors. But what many people don't know is in these tracks and sectors, how data is stored. Data is stored in tracks and sectors, but not people are aware about how data is stored in these tracks and sectors. Actually, data is stored in this direction: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is the direction. Data is not stored in a spiral way. That is gramophone records. They store data in a spiral way. In floppy, CD, hard disk, data is never stored in spiral. It is stored in this way. That means in this direction it will store. Understood? You can see that. For example, see, I hope you people know, suppose this is a hard disk drive. This is internal part of hard disk. That means inside hard disk, it looks like this. This is inside hard disk. So this is the internal part of hard disk. Now, usually in this actually, so in this hard disk, you can see in this hard disk, actually, you can observe that in this hard disk, this is read-write head. That is read-write head. We call it as read-write head. This is called spindle, right? And this disk is fixed to this here. Now this read-write head is fixed here. Disk will rotate round, am I right? Disk will rotate round, but this will rotate like this, like a viper. Left, right, like a viper. That means how data is stored. That means how data is stored inside it. That means how the data is stored inside it. That means data is stored in this way. How data is stored: 1, 2, 3. After that, disk will rotate. After disk is rotated, 4, 5, 6. This read-write pin you cannot lift it and place where you want. Due to this, what happens is, due to this mechanism, what happens is, suppose this place is left empty. Understood? Now this read-write head, whatever the read-write head is there, right? This is the read-write head. It goes there and cannot store the data there. It goes to next location. That means memory is available, but you cannot use. This is called overhead. We started facing this problem after floppy, CDs and hard disks introduced. So because memory is there, but head is unable to reach there. You cannot store. Memory is there, but it is not available to use. And to manage this, we have disk defragmentation. We have a concept called disk defragmentation. Even today it is there, but you don't know to use it manually because internally it happens. Early days when we were using Windows 98, Windows XP like operating systems, we have to do this disk defragmentation manually. But you see, actually we have disk defragmentation. This is defragmentation. What is disk defragmentation is nothing but it will move all used sectors one side, unused sectors another side. So again, space is adjusted. That is what actually the concept of defragmentation. Now that means the concept of making the memory available. So means memory is available but cannot be used. That is overhead. To overcome this problem into computer programming, they introduced the concept called arrays. Arrays. How arrays can reduce overhead? Array can reduce overhead. Arrays can reduce overhead by storing values in sequential order. By storing values in sequential order, they can reduce overhead. If values are stored in sequential order, then there is no overhead. And array can reduce complexity by storing multiple values under one reference. Am I right? It can reduce complexity, but the primary aim of array is overhead, reducing overhead. And remember, array can store various types of values. But in Java, .NET, C++ like languages, they will tell you array is similar type of values. That is their technology problem. Java have a problem in allocating different types of memory in a sequential order. That is the reason Java, .NET like languages restrict array to store only similar type of values. That is not definition. That is their technology problem. You are learning as definition. That means array can store different types of values. Some technologies have problem in that. That is the reason they restricted arrays for same. JavaScript don't have problem. TypeScript don't have problem. JavaScript, TypeScript arrays can store different types of values. Java, .NET like languages cannot change array size dynamically, but JavaScript can do. That is the reason never say that array is similar type of values. You should say that in my Java array is similar type of values. That is better. Right? In my Java array size cannot be changed dynamically. Don't say array size cannot be changed dynamically, because it can be changed dynamically. Some technologies cannot do that. That is their problem. Right? That means array size can be changed dynamically. Na? Suppose you see here, we have script, we have var values is equal to, so new array, right? Into that size is 3. So I am keeping here values of 0 is equal to 10, values of 1 is equal to 20, values of 2 is equal to 30, values of 3 is equal to 40, values of 4 is equal to 50. Other languages will say invalid. But here document.write, I am printing the values and you can see it is valid. We can use them. It is valid. There is no problem. We can change array size dynamically. In other languages, it will say index out of range. So in an array, you can store string, right? You can store a string. You can store a boolean. Am I right? You can store different types of values in an array. But some technologies have problem. So similar type of values, and that is not array purpose. Storing similar type of values is not array purpose. Reducing overhead is array purpose. Array purpose. Now the question is, why it is called array? What does that means? What is the meaning of array? Why it is called array? What is the meaning of array? Actually, for example, we have a stack. We have a stack. We have a queue. Am I right? We have an array. Why it is called as array? Why it is called as stack? For example, you have, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Here also you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All are in sequence only. Am I right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All are in sequence only. Now, how stack can access? Last in, first out. That means which one will come first? So which one will come first? 6. How queue is accessed? First in, first out. How array can access from any location? That is the nature of array. Array, form an array. Form an array means keep in a sequential order, but I will access randomly. Understood? The meaning of forming an array is keeping in a sequential order which allows random access. Right? For example, where you see this generally, suppose you are calling candidates for interview. Am I right? And first person interview time is 7:20 a.m. Second person interview time is 7 a.m. Understood? Third person interview time is suppose 8 a.m. Like this we have. like that different. Now they are in order standing, or they are sitting in a line. Sequentially, they are sitting in a queue. But we will not call the first person first, right? Even they are sitting in a queue, sequential order, we will call the person according to his timing. That means which one will be called first here? The person 7 a.m. will be called first here, right? They are forming a queue. They are forming a sequence, but we don't call by sequence. We can randomly access, which is not possible with the stack and queues. And very important is JavaScript array can have all behaviors. It can work as a stack, as a queue, as a random. That is the reason there are no collections in JavaScript. There are no collections. Why other technologies need collections? Java collections, .NET collections. Why they need collections library? Because their array don't have that behavior. But in JavaScript, why we don't need collections? Because our array have that behavior. We don't need any collections like stacks and queues, because only one array is enough. Because why other technologies need that? Because their array is restricted. Here array is not restricted. So that is the reason JavaScript, TypeScript doesn't require any stacks and queues. So, but still we can manage in that way. By using arrays, we can do that. So now what is specialty about TypeScript arrays? TypeScript array can work as both. It can work for similar type of values. It can work for different type of values. That's good. That means a TypeScript array have both behaviors. You can design array with similar type values. We can design array with different type values. It have both behaviors. So that is the reason it have wide range than compared to others, right? Now, how to declare and configure arrays, we will see practically. That we'll see next session tomorrow, right? Tomorrow we can discuss about all other data types and work with them, okay? That I will just tell you the differences. Then you can easily handle them. Where we have to concentrate much is OOP concepts. These are all basic, right? Data types, variables, operators, statements, all are same as JavaScript. We will concentrate much on OOP concept, object-oriented approach. That we will continue in tomorrow's session, okay? Tomorrow we'll see.